Is she coming back in? There she comes.
My daughter?
Yeah.
Yeah, but she doesn't give cash.
She doesn't geocache?
No. She fits in the card on her tip. We're working in thumbs.
You know somebody out there, though. Okay, am I live? All right, very good. Welcome to Mountain Monday, and today we're going to be talking about GPS, not exclusively, but to get things started. Why don't we go around the room, since there's so few of us, and kind of introduce yourselves. My name is Doug McLaren. I work for the University of Kentucky, not here, but in Lexington, Kentucky. I did work here for about 15 years at one time, a long time ago. And Mike, introduce yourself.
My name is Mike McCaffrey. I'm from Hazard, Kentucky. And I am an active geocacher. I've been geocaching since Thanksgiving of 2005. And I have 8,139 finds. I geocached in 9 states in Canada.
Great, okay. We'll hear more from Mike a little bit later. Jimmy, go ahead.
I'm Jimmy Sines, we're Clay County, Kentucky, and I'm here today just to learn a little bit more about using my GPS.
Great. Sean, would you like to introduce you and your family?
Sean Wright, I'm the horticulturist here at Quicksand Station, but we're here just because I thought my daughter Joanne and my son Josiah would be a good thing for them, good skill for them to learn, and they might enjoy geocaching.
I do believe. And your daughter?
I'm Kyla McCaffrey.
Great. Good to have you all here tonight. This is your program, so if you have any questions, just jump in. But we are going to be talking about GPS and geocaching. And it's always interesting, where does one start? Well, where should we start? Well, we'll start at the beginning, and we will go until we come to the end, and then we shall stop. And that is from Alice in Wonderland, chapter, what is that, X7, I guess, written by Lewis Carroll. My objective in using, or the objectives for using these GPS units tonight is simply to have fun. That's what we're here for. This is what it was not designed this way. A lot of the uses of GPS is not for having fun, but I think for our use and your use, having fun is the best way to approach it. What does GPS stand for? Anybody know what those 3 letters stand for?
Global Positioning System.
Yes, Global Positioning System. That's exactly what it means. And here's basically our global. And on that globe, we have those lines that are on there. And those ones that run from the top down are our longitude. And the ones that run around the middle are the latitude. What does this one refer to as? Equator, exactly. We'll get to this one, but does anybody know what that line is going down through England? Prime Meridian, yes. And that's basically, if you get into map reading, those are the 2 things that you kind of start with and go from there. The North Pole, South Pole, and equator and prime meridian. And there it is right there. It's at Greenwich, England. And it's actually, that line in the sand is the prime meridian. And if it wouldn't have been a hazy day, you would see London in the background right there. But what you can do is straddle that line right there, and you're either in the western hemisphere or the eastern hemisphere. It all starts right there in Greenwich, England. And this is where navigation all got started. This is a long story, but we'll shorten it up simply to say that this building is seen from the ocean or the bay near London. And this particular, to find yourself on the face of the earth, you had to be able to sight stars and also know what the time is. And so what they would do is drop this ball, I believe it was 12 o'clock every day, so that the ships at sea or the ones going to sea could set their clocks. So they had a good start to keep things working. We are in Lexington, Kentucky, which means we're north and we are west. Very important to note especially, well, either one, east and west, north and south. I'm gonna actually have you go out here in a little while and actually look for something. And the story that I'll show you here a little bit later, and that is, if you put south or if you put east, you're already about 5,000 miles off. So you need to be real careful about how you put that in. Here comes somebody else running very quickly. We'll wait that individual out. Come on in. Are you here for GPS?
Yes.
You're right on time. We just got started. Come right on in and sit right down. We are just going over the basic map reading skills, and that is longitude, latitude, and where they are on the face of Europe. And they all started in Greenwich, England, or at least the primary place. And again, probably one of the most difficult things, not the most difficult things, it's real easy to do, but the simplest mistake you can make is putting an E in there where it should be a west, or a south where it should be a north. And what happens is your fingers and thumbs get going, and you put these numbers in, and all of a sudden you change the letters. And like I said, you can be 5,000 miles off before you can get started, which does not help trying to find something at all. Let me go back in history and tell you a little bit about some events that happened in historic times. It kind of brings us up to where we are and all about North America and this, that, and the next. And James Cook, does anybody know whose flag James Cook flew under during the exploration years? Those two right back there should be. Yeah, don't look at what dude? He flew for the English flag. He was in the English Navy, and he basically was sent out to explore the high seas, because very few people had explored, especially this part of the world, and so this was his mission. And he made a number of trips doing this. And 68 to 1780, he was actually killed near the Hawaiian Islands, I do believe, on his very last trip. But the thing that's interesting is the information that James Cook collected was actually retained until 1990s, because he had done such accurate readings with the stars, compass, and all the navigational skills back then. And do we know what displaced his information in the 1990s? 3 letters. Starts with a G, GPS. The thing is you didn't really need to know the exact location of some of these places out here. And then when GPS came along, it was so easy to actually do it. But a lot of his information was retained until that late in time. March 1778, what happened was, actually it was a 2-year voyage. 2 years prior to 1778 was what? If you take 2 away from that, you come up with what? 1776, and what started? Well, you're right, and the Revolutionary War got started. And this dude, he's over here in England. He's being sent out overseas to explore. We had no men. And what he did was he went to the streets, and lo and behold, he came up with a person that was there from America, just at the wrong place at the wrong time. And he said, "Come with me. You're not a prisoner, but you're not going anywhere once you get on that boat." And so for 2 years they sailed around, and they came to this spot right here, right there. And we all see where that is on the west coast of North America. And he actually saw a place which actually retains the name of Cape Foulweather, Oregon, simply because the weather was so horribly bad. And he said, basically, there's nothing remarkable about it. And he had just missed a good portion of the United States. What was interesting is we had this gentleman who was on the boat. He was an American. His name was John Ledyard. And he recognized that they were on the west coast of North America. he actually, John Ledward, was from this part of the United States. And he had gone over to Europe, and like I said, got caught at the wrong place at the wrong time. But he realized that they were on the west coast of America. And the way they put that all together is they were able to do latitudes and longitudes way back then. And he recognized the fact that he was 3,000 miles from home. Because they were able to calculate the latitude and longitude. He knew what the latitude and longitude of home was, and he knew he was 3,000 miles from home. He decided he'd stay on the boat. It was a better deal for him at that particular time. But John Ledyard kept this information in the back of his head. And he ran into this guy. When he got back, the war was over. He got back. James Cook had been killed, but they got the boat back on shore. John Ledward was let go. The war was all over, and this, that, and the next. And John made his way to Paris. And he ran into this guy. And who is this dude? It's Thomas Jefferson, not the president. It's Thomas Jefferson, the Secretary of State. And John said to Thomas Jefferson, he said, why don't you fund me to explore Western United States? And Thomas Jefferson said, I don't have any money, I have no abilities, we've run out of money, we're a war-stricken country, and we're just getting started, I can't do anything about it. Now remember, he's Secretary of State under Washington. Well, in 1801, he becomes president. And guess, this was 20 years later, guess what he remembers? He remembers what John Ledyard had said. Ledyard actually had died at this particular point in time. But Jefferson's remembering what he said. And so now that he's president, now he's got all kinds of money he can invest. And so what he said was, he started and decided to send somebody out west on what expedition? Lewis and Clark, exactly. Lewis and Clark exploration. And Thomas Jefferson basically wrote them a blank check because he wanted to know for the United States what resources were out through here. And it basically ended up on the west coast where Ledyard had been 20 years earlier. So basically, Clark exploration was based upon Cape Foul weather's latitude and longitude. You knew that it was 3,000 miles across. But it took persistence and nearly 20 years later for Jefferson to actually be able to carry this all out. So the thing is, even back then, 1776, we're dealing with latitudes and longitudes and the math involved in it, and they knew the distance between points. And that's what GPS is all about. It's simply not where you are, but everything around you and the relationship to it. And we'll talk about that very, very quickly here. I have 4 questions coming up. There's one answer. It is not GPS. 4 questions. They all have the same answer, but it is not GPS. What do we use to determine the distance between 2 points? What do we use to determine the direction to proceed to our destination? What do we use to select the best alternative route? And what do we use to determine the relationship between 2 or more points on the face of the earth? Exactly, a map. And the thing is, we are going to take this map and all the maps that you know of in the world, and we're going to replace it with this instrument tonight, the GPS. Okay? But the map is the correct answer. Basically, the GPS does nothing more than replace the map with a technical piece of information. Now, with the map, all these questions that I asked you, you have to do some manipulations to find all of these answers. With this thing, the answers are basically instantaneous to you. You do not have to do much measurement. Now, one thing I will say about a GPS, and that is between this point and this point, don't worry about how many miles or whatever it is, but what is that distance? It's an old saying that we have. It's a blackbird.
As a float.
As the crow flies. It's that way, as the crow flies. Remember, no matter what is between you and there, you have to be able to transact that thing. So the thing is the GPS is good because it can give you instantaneous pieces of information. But the problem is what do you have to go through to get to that? And so then you're back to the map, alternative routes and things like that. And the GPS, more sophisticated ones, can help you do that. Okay, back to this particular map, latitude measures north-south and longitude measures our east-west. And, yeah, let me make sure. Yeah, so sometimes just being somewhere is not enough. And that's what I wanted to say about all kinds of being somewhere. And that is, if I were to take you to this location blindfolded, and I took you out there, and I took you to that spot down in that little valley right there, and I took your blindfold off, and I said, okay, go home. Go to your home. Go anywhere. I mean, go to some landmark that you know. What would be your problem?
Or where you're starting from.
Correct. You don't know where you're starting from. And the thing is even though you may have a compass, you may have a GPS that has no brains in it when it's first opened up. The thing is you don't know if you should go north, south, east, or west. So location is very important. And that is, here's the town of Hopkinsville. Means absolutely nothing. You're in Hopkinsville, so what? Well, now when you talk about Henderson, well, it's north so many miles. And if you're talking about going over here to Russell Springs from Hopkinsville, well, it's directly due east, X number of miles. And to get to Nashville, we would go south, and to get to Paducah, we would go west. Now there's a relationship, and that's what a GPS and a map does. It creates relationships for you. Where you are versus where you want to go is the relationship. Everything is relative to another location, but being somewhere is not really important. It's where you're going or where you've come from. Okay, let's get into a little bit of the technical part of GPS, and we're not going to delve in very, very far. Some helpful hints. It is a satellite-based system for navigation. Some of the older people in this room will understand when I say it's about the size of an old VW bus. It's a small SUV, I guess you might say. That's about the size of it. And let me see if it comes next here. No, it doesn't tell me how many yet. What it does, it will calculate your position and movement. Two very important things. Not only where you are, but all of your movement. I'm sure by now it is not a mystery that this is what is in your car. If you have a satellite system in your car that is showing you how to get somewhere or where you are going, you are using this set of satellites in the sky. All right? It became fully operational in 1995. This is also for the people that are a little bit older in the room, and that is the Russians put up a satellite called Sputnik, and it was in the 70s, I think. No, it must have been the late 60s. They basically put a satellite up in the sky. It was there for no apparent reason, except they wanted to see if they could put a satellite in the sky that would rotate around the Earth, and it did. Well, this got the interest of the Americans going, and they said, okay, their satellite is up in the sky. We know where it is. We can keep track of it. Let's just reverse the whole operation, put our own satellites up so we can negotiate things on the ground. And so that's what they did. This was in the 60s. Can you imagine the coffee break room that day when a bunch of scientists sat down and said, the Russians had this satellite up, we're going to do the reverse operation of it, and then start to sit there scribbling on pieces of paper as to how they're going to go about doing it. They didn't complete it until 1995. which meant they didn't get the 24 satellites. The entire orbit, the entire set of satellites that they need didn't get done until 1995. And there are 24 satellites roaming around. Well, they're not roaming, they know exactly where they are. And anywhere on the face of the earth, you can find your position with a GPS unit. Anywhere on the face of the earth. Doesn't matter if you're at the North Pole, the South Pole, or the equator, or out in the middle of the deepest ocean, you're still going to be able to find out what your position is. Which means I know where I am, especially if you're on a boat, I know where I am, where's the closest port. That is a very helpful little piece of information to have. And they are traveling at 7,000 miles per hour. So here is a small Volkswagen minibus traveling 7,000 miles per hour. There's 24 of them up in the sky, keeping us all in position. Also, these things are up 12,500 miles. Does anybody know how far the space station is up in the sky? If you were to say roughly 300 miles, you're right. 300 miles. This sucker, these 24 are up 12,500 miles. And the reason for that is use fewer of them. Fewer satellites, the higher you get. Like I said, the space shuttle is up only 300 miles. This thing's up 12,500 miles. And they basically rotate twice a day at 7,000 miles per hour. You can see how they're doing that. And it takes at least 3 satellites to make these measurements. You have to have at least 3 satellites. How does it work? Triangulation. The word tri, which means you have 3 satellites. There is another word that they throw in there, but basically your knowledge of triangulation is good. It is a radio signal. The radio signal is coming from the satellite and not from the GPS unit. A lot of people think when you turn this on, all of a sudden, it's starting to pull the satellites towards the ground. It's just like having a radio in your hand. When you turn this on, you're getting the radio, you're getting the songs being played on the satellite. They come down and start looking at this thing. It takes 3 of those satellites for you to be able to determine your position on the face of the earth. And we measure everything in nanoseconds. Does anybody know how fast that nanosecond is? Real fast. It's a billionth of a second. It's real fast. And the speed of the distance from the speed that it takes the signal to get from the satellite to your handheld is what determines where you are on the face of the earth. Now, accuracy. This is the exciting part of this whole game, and that is how much money do you have? What it comes down to, the more money you have, the more accurate things are. If, for some reason, you needed to find this location on the ground, if you needed to find that location on the ground, you're going to need an instrument such as that right there, which is about $100,000 to find that penny. Which means, if you're trying to find a property boundary in a city, which would be the size of this penny, you would need an instrument like that. And all they do is go out there, set this thing up over top of that penny or point, and just let it run. And then they run statistics on all that information. What you're going to be doing tonight is, you are going to be running this unit, which is $150, and basically it's going to get you within this circle right here. So when I send you out there tonight to look for something, remember, whenever you get to the screen on the GPS unit, will say basically you're here. And when it says that you're here, you're actually right there. So you're going to have to look in this larger circle for what you're actually trying to find. And
What is
there's
that, 10 foot or so?
No, 30. 30
I
30?
would say about, well, I told them about 20,
Yeah.
25, 30. Once you're about 20, okay, once your GPS unit says
You're here.
20 feet, or you're here, you wanna look,
You're on the outer
you
boundary.
wanna start basically doing a radius of 20 feet, 20, 25 feet.
But when it tells you that you're here, you're gonna have to then stop and then start searching 20 to 30 feet out from that circle. It is not going to take you right there. This one will, but nobody's gonna carry that, and nobody's gonna run a statistical package on it. This one basically takes one spot very, very quickly, all right?
Doug,
Yes.
Joanna was asking, do they always get a good signal no matter where you're at here in eastern Kentucky with the forests and things?
We're going there, but no. We're gonna be touching upon that, but no, it does not. There are limitations to a GPS unit, and one of them is the hills. And the deeper you go into the valley, the less accuracy you have. And also, we have just passed the threshold of vegetation. And right now, with all the leaves on the trees, we're getting even less accuracy. So the dead of winter on a flat surface is the best time and best place. But you are correct, accuracy will be there. Well, Brendan, we're going to hit that, I think, here just in a few moments. Basically, what it's being used for in vehicle navigation is the thing that it's being used for. But marine, that means boats. You go beyond the horizon. It's nice to know which way back is. The military uses it extensively. People tracking, there's a wristwatch that you can buy for Alzheimer's patients, and you can put that on. Also, I hate to put it into the same statement, but also if you have a dog, a hunting dog that is of value to you, you can put one of these things on too, so that dog does not get lost. Recreation mapping, vehicle tracking, you've all seen enough TV to know where GPS is being used for. Basically, it's taken over our whole society. This is a picture of a semi. This picture and this picture are the same one. This is a semi truck, and all I'm doing is blowing up this, and this is the satellite on top of the truck. And then this one is for hauling vehicles, and then it has one too. Basically, they know exactly where that truck is at all times. That's how UPS knows where you are, or they know where your package is, because it's being tracked one way or another. Pros and cons, I think we're going to get into her list right now. GPS is conceived 24/7, which means anytime, day or night, you want to turn it on, you can use it. During all types of weather, a lot of people would say, well, it's raining, it's snowing, it's hailing, it's doing all those things. Well, you can listen to your radio, can't you? Well, it's the same thing. It's a signal, it's a radio signal that can more or less pierce. Now, there's a little bit of disorientation there, but it still works to a large degree. A lot of people thought there was a subscription cost, which meant they thought that when they bought one, they had to pay an annual fee to be able to get this information delivered to them. No, there is no fee. It's not like Sirius, what's the radio?
Sirius,
Sirius, yeah, exactly. AM, right, correct. There is no fee as long as you continue to pay your taxes. We're in good shape. Because who operates and maintains the GPS system that I just described? The military. They use it. They actually, up until 2000, they had exclusive use for it. We got fringes of the information, but basically it was exclusively military. But in 2000, they turned the key and everybody had use for it. But the military uses this thing extensively. This is how they're able to put a bomb somewhere without having to go to that location. All they need to know is know where a position is that they want to drop a bomb on, and they simply lock that into the armament of that bomb, and they send it on its way for miles, and it gets to where it needs to be. You have to have a view of the sky to calculate the location, which means, and I'll tell you this right now, if you turn it on, you're gonna get a signal in here. But it is gonna be beat up so bad by the time it gets to that table. It will come through that window, it'll come through that door, but it will be beat up. You will have, it could be, same here in Los Angeles for all I know, but it will be beat up tremendously. You need to be outside where we're gonna go eventually. They are powered by batteries. I taught a class and I told these people, I said, I'm giving you this GPS to use for the next number of weeks. Make sure you have batteries. Well, we got out there to the location. Well, they had batteries in it, but they were dead on the door now, so they had to turn around and come all the way back. So that can be your biggest venture right there. There are associated costs. Remember, I said accuracy, the more accurate you want it to be, the more money you have to invest. You can buy all kinds of cables, antennas, cables that go into computers, cables that go everywhere, into every piece of equipment you could ever imagine. And it seems for some reason each one of those cables is $100. I don't know what it is, but they're $100 each one of them. And you have to have a clear line of vision, which means when you get into a city environment with all that chatter coming off of all those buildings, off of all those windows, it creates a problem. Plus, a clear line of vision with these on. So, this little instrument right here that I'm going to let you borrow for the next few minutes when we get started, this unit cost $150. And this one actually is, I like this one because it has a good screen on it, a nice large screen. I'll come back over. And I'll do this. This is the, sorry, this is the unit, it's a Garmin. Every unit out there has the same accuracy as far as I'm concerned, and the same abilities. It's just that I got started with Garmin, and the thing is once you get started with the, knowing the locations of all of the subdirectories in here, it's much easier to know one brand than to be jumping around. So I use Garmin's, but that has a real nice screen on it, relatively large. But here's some of the things that you can get for $150. I wouldn't be surprised if for about $80 now you can get the same answers. It can tell you elevations, how high something is. You do have to have a fourth satellite. That accuracy is not quite as good as what the land surface is, but it will give you elevations. It will give you the go-to option, and that's where you're going tonight is, I'm going to give you a location and you're going to be asked to go to it, all right? So it does have that option. It will measure distance between this point and that point. And what distance is that? As the crow flies, exactly. It will measure acreage also. We deal with this in natural resources all the time. We have to have some idea how much land is involved, and so what we'll do is we will use an instrument like this. And the thing is it's not as accurate as other pieces of information. You probably wouldn't go to court with this, but we'll give you a good basis to start from. Okay? It will tell you the time of sun and moon set and rise to the minute to your location, wherever that location might be. It will tell you. It will also tell you good fishing days, if you're interested in that. I have heard from every fisherman there is that there's never a good day, except for the day that you're out there. As far as being able to go. It will tell you the moon phase. It gives you the most accurate time in the world. The only problem is, I found out, even though it's the most accurate timepiece, taking duct tape and put it on your wrist like that, it just isn't worth the time and effort. And so it's good timing, but it's hard to read on that thing. Trip odometer, which means if you went out here, set everything back to 0, and went somewhere, it will tell you exactly how far you have gone. Even though you're going on crooked roads, it will tell you exactly, just like in your cars, the instrumentation you're using there.
Now, it's going to give you the exact measurement of the route
Correct.
It won't give you the,
Correct.
as the crow flies
No.
distance from. Okay.
No, because you have simply set everything to 0 and said, just keep track of my trip. So it will keep track. Now, the thing is, if I said, I'm leaving here and I want to go to Hazard, it will give me the crow's, meaning if I simply say, I'm here, how far is it to Hazard? It will give me the crow's distance. Let's see what else comes up. The amount of stop time. This is a very interesting one. I was doing this for a long period of time in Lexington, meaning we had an all-day class. And in the morning, we talk about the stuff that we're talking about now, and in the afternoon, I was going to show them how they can take the data that they collect and download it onto a map. So what I did is I told them to take their GPS unit, turn it on, throw it in the back window of their car, and go wherever they wanted to go. So when they got back, I took several of the GPS units from the back of the car. I knew exactly where they went to eat. I knew exactly. I also knew how much time they spent at the stop lights. Well, I'm sorry, it was total time. It was at the stop lights as well as while they were eating. I knew their total stop time on that. But I was able to, I just threw it up here. I took the data from the GPS, threw it up on a map, and it just overlaid it. And everybody could see where they went for lunch. Estimated time of arrival. And you have all used this, I know, on your units. And that is, set it, I want to go somewhere. It automatically knows the route that you're going to take. It knows the speed of that route. It knows the stops, lights that you're going to run into. So it will give you the estimated time of arrival. All right, and moving average speed. Yeah, it's going to hit right down here. Moving average speed, which means at the end of your trip, it will tell you what your average speed was. Stop versus the fastest. Maximum speed, it will tell you the maximum speed. This little unit for $150 for parents is a wonderful piece of instrumentation.